Hi, everyone. Thank you for checking out this week's episode. I wanted to jump on and offer a small reminder of the ways that you can connect with us. The first way is our socials. So we are Men I've Tolerated Pod on Instagram and Natalie K124 on TikTok, my personal Instagram. And you can find us on YouTube and Pinterest under To All the Men I've Tolerated Before. The second way is by becoming a Patreon member. We are well on our way to our 25 member Patreon, where we are going to unlock bonus perks to being a patron member. Shout out to all of our existing patrons. As an independently ran and funded podcast, your support means everything. Another way that you can connect with us is making sure to subscribe and leave comments wherever you can so we can start reading reviews on each podcast episode. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure to check out the merch store, and we will see you next week. Tolerators, this is To All the Men I've Tolerated Before with Natalie Katona, your weekly look at everyday misogyny. Today, my guest is Kim Coffin. Kim is a certified trauma-informed, somatic, body-based. You're going to have to tell me if I said somatic correctly after.
Somatic is good. Yes, somatic is good.
Sex, love, and relationship teacher, speaker, soon to be author, which we love on To All the Men I've Tolerated Before, and coach, graduate of Layla Martin's Institute of Integrated Tantric Sexuality, and founder of Get Your Sexy Back. She specializes in sexuality, tantric, sex, and relationship transformation, giving you the tools to unleash your sexual confidence and unlock profound new levels of self-love, pleasure, empowerment, and intimacy with yourself, which are things that we talk often and furiously about when it comes to All the Men I've Tolerated Before, and how misogyny made us so uncomfortable in our own bodies and with our own sexuality. So that's what we'll be talking about today. And Kim, thank you for being so willing to be our expert in confidence in sexy.
Absolutely. Honored to be here. Thank you.
So let's start with Get Your Sexy Back. How did that, because I was looking into it and it used to be called Badass Bitches, correct?
Our podcasted, yes. Our podcasted because it was actually 4 of us who got together and started a podcast all with our own businesses. So my business has always been Get Your Sexy Back. But specifically, podcast realigned to Get Your Sexy Back alone when the others kind of left. Yeah, it was perfect.
You got to rebrand.
Yeah, but we were the badass bitches for sure, the 4 badass bitches, and we had a lot of fun.
Listen, life is so much easier when you have your badass bitches around you. I've been telling people, I go, you guys keep taking these people with low vibe energy to your movies and wedding dates and all of it, and you just need your best girlfriend with you to make you feel good.
Exactly. Yeah.
Tell me about Get Your Sexy Back and how you were called to creating Get Your Sexy Back.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to go all the way back? Start at the beginning? Because that's where the story makes sense.
Yeah, whatever makes sense to you. Paint us a picture.
We'll go all the way back, which comes back to disconnection, right? It comes some of the things we're going to talk about, which goes into utter societal disconnection, teaching women, teaching girls to disconnect from their bodies, that our pleasure is not ours, all of these things. But it also started with a big trauma, and just kind of heads up, trauma trigger warning, both. For those who are listening, if you're not in a place to listen, come back at another time kind of thing. But it did start for me what I can identify as a big part of me disconnecting, which was waking up in the middle of the night at 14, being sexually assaulted by my stepfather. And that was a big, holy shit, what am I doing here? But then there was this other piece that caused even more disconnection that I see looking back, which would be I told my mother the next morning, And she believed me initially, but then within hours she did not. Because she had spoken to him, he told her no, that was the way it was, end of story. So that utter betrayal from my mother, it was never spoken of again, led me into just doubting myself, not knowing where I fit in. And then you add in all the other societal conditioning around our bodies, our sexuality, and our pleasure as women. Yeah, so this total betrayal um, left me disconnected. It left me doubting myself. It left me cycling in what's going on. I couldn't trust myself, right? Like if this happened and I trusted myself and I told my mother and she doesn't believe me, then can I trust myself? Like there's a whole mind fuck going on there. I'm really hoping I can swear on your podcast. That's just kind of like me. Okay, good. I should
We're
have
allowed to
asked.
cuss at the patriarchy.
Oh, good. I normally ask. So, going into my 20s and 30s, I was really burnt out, stressed, numb, right? We have to disconnect from this pain, whether it's an assault, whether it's trauma, whether it's messaging, toxic sexuality. We have to disconnect because it's too painful. We can't be who we are. So this left me caught in this cycle of overgiving and doubting and not feeling like I fit in, which eventually led to exhaustion, adrenal fatigue, thyroid dysfunction, right? Like really frustrated and angry, but don't admit you're angry. Like it was all packed up in there, right? My body was definitely giving me messages the entire way through: back pain, period pain, right? Thyroid, adrenals, all of this, but I wasn't listening exactly. To me, that assault had to be put down, shut, put away, close the door, like gone, right? So anytime that maybe have come into my mind, or maybe I got some work to do here, it was like, nope, that's done, gone. Like it's not allowed to be talked about. And this wasn't my decision; it was my mother's decision, right?
Well, and then I always think that that's the biggest tool that misogyny and patriarchy did. It handed us these very shaky relationships with the women who came before us because we're either trying to progress and they are so exhausted by the progression that they had to make that our progression exhausts them, or they found coping mechanisms to cope with the things that they've been told and the things that they had to go through. That when you also have something that you are going through, their coping mechanisms don't always align with what is actually helpful to us.
Yeah. Totally. Her trauma responses, her being my mother, were to quickly put that under the rug. Let's fawn this. Let's disconnect. Let's dissociate if we have to. I didn't see it as that at the time. Of course, I was 14. And then moving on, right? And it took a while. It took 27 years for me to confront my mother because it wasn't just this piece. She was also very controlling, and what she said went, right? Again, it's coming from that patriarchal system of sit down, shut up, get in this box, behave, and be the good girl, the good wife, the good mom, the good daughter, or else you're kicked out of the tribe. And our bodies just desire, our nervous systems just desire safety, love, and belonging. And I tell this story because I know my story is not different from so many others out there. I know that almost every single human out there has disconnected from their body because it's too painful to live there. And it's really, really hard. And just like my mother, we're not able to step into our power until we can, which fast forwards to the rest of my story. Any questions there before we go?
I love what you said about when you were having all of these feelings that you had to choke down, it was causing physical discomfort in your body. I went and saw the Whitney Houston movie recently, and I texted a bunch of creators of color to be like, someone who is not me needs to put on a t-shirt, all black women are exhausted, Whitney Houston, because she says it to her manager in the movie when he goes, you seem tired. And she just goes, all black women are exhausted. And it's so true about, we're also not allowed the comfort of allowing ourselves to be tired and feel that and then rest. And lovely capitalism, who loves to hold hands with the patriarchy, is also telling us to always be grinding through that. Like,
If our day is packed 12 hours, we are doing good.
We're doing it. We're doing so well. But yeah, move on to the next part of your story. This is riveting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you brought that up because that is what we're told. That is what we're taught. And absolute opposite is actually true for women. And it is very specific. Men are very linear. This is how they work. They go, 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 go. They rest at the end of the day. They watch TV. They do nothing and they go to bed. They do it again. Like that is their clock. But women actually, we have a cyclical clock, we have a cyclical calendar. We are going through seasons every single month. We're going through spring, summer, fall, and winter, and coming back again. And we're being forced to not follow our own natural rhythms with society, overworking, go, 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 put in 12 hours. So by coming home to our body and reconnecting and listening to our body and getting those micro messages that our body's always sending, we can learn to reclaim our natural rhythm, to work better. And if anything, it actually is working better with air quotes here, not better in the patriarchal system better, but better in empowered, in turned on, in lit up, in passionate, in still making time for ourselves and magnetizing everything we desire to come and call to us from doing so. That is available to us. So there's a little fast forward preview. Let's go back. It was in 2013 when I really started noticing something has to change. Something has to give. My mother was still in my life. My stepfather was still in my life. And it was starting in there where I started to take my power back, where I started to set more boundaries, where I started to say no to my mother, which was really scary. This trauma really impacted me, right, over the years. And this is me in, mid 30s and still not being able to speak up to my mother. So I really had this feeling that there was something more, something had to change, but it was still really wobbly, really wobbly. It was in 2017 where I was like, okay, I'm done here. Like there has to be another way. I can't keep going like this. Like my body is done, burnt out. There was nothing more to give. And it wasn't happy. It wasn't fun to live. There was depression in there, right? There was hating my body, distrusting, doubting, all of this. And it was then that I really started my deep reclamation journey. So I started working with world renowned leaders across the world, many of them, like Mama Gina, Layla Martin, Sheila Kelly, Bernadette Pleasant. There's like so many that I've worked with, and they're fabulous. And I really started to really started to heal trauma, really started to reclaim me, reclaim my body, reconnect to my pussy, reconnect to my pleasure, and really allowed my body to come alive. Like, really come alive.
What a journey. And while you were going through that, all I could think of was, well, before we even get to the point where we would be thinking about sex or hormones are starting and we're starting to feel what it means to be turned on or to want something or to desire someone, we're already taught, like, don't listen to your body. It's hug Uncle Frank at Christmas. What do you mean you don't want to?
Yeah. Oh, I just want to, oh.
And in a certain circumstance with my family, I said at a very young age that I didn't want to spend alone time anymore at my grandmother's house. And it really hurt feelings. And I said, the way that she talks about my sister to me, and the way I know she talks about me to my sister, is very stressful. And I do not like that game. And it makes me sad. And I was 12 or 13. And I was told, get your bag and we're going back. And it's Christmas and this is what we will be doing. And things will go on because you are in a family and families make sacrifices for one another or we love one another unconditionally. And it's not even that the next part of that sentence is who cares how you're feeling. But when you're a kid, you're like, well, who the fuck does care? Who the fuck does care that I'm feeling?
Yeah. Yeah, the oh my gosh, all of that, like the whole systems that, and it's no fault to our parents and our grandparents. Like this is how they were raised. Okay, there's some fault. Let me take that back. But from you're hearing the rest of my story, but this is how most of our parents and grandparents were raised, right? They're taught this, giving that sovereignty to your young 11 and 12-year-old self is so painful. It's so, you have to disconnect. It's like either they're right and I'm like wrong here, or I'm right, but I gotta live with them still and depend on them still.
Mm-hmm.
So it threatens our safety, our love, and our belonging. And that's all our primal nervous system needs and wants. That's all it wants. It wants to keep us safe, loved, and belonging. So there's no way you fight back at that because you didn't have that knowledge. You don't have the adult brain to handle that.
Oh,
But the disconnection, like in reality, what you should be taught is, okay, what boundaries do you need to put in place? Do you need to speak up to your grandmother? Sure, you're going to still see your family. Do you need to ask her that if she does this, or do you need to tell her if she keeps talking about your sister like this, you're going to leave the room and walk away? Like, there's no reason a 12-year-old can't set a boundary with her grandmother, but we're not taught these. We're not taught these things.
yeah. And again, I am finally to the point where it's like I stop laying all of the fault onto them because they were the adults in the room, because I'm like emotional. I'm like grown up children, raised children, because we've all unfortunately not come to the end of the finish line of all of the ways that society is going to condition us to be emotionally closed off and immature and not able to talk about these things. So we're all living under a very oppressive system when it comes to how our bodies feel. And that's why I tell people that they need to watch what they say about to around kids, and it has nothing to do with curse words. I'm like, stop telling kids that their head doesn't hurt. If they're, why would they be telling you that their head hurts if their head doesn't hurt?
Same thing if kids are coming home with tummy aches over and over and over. Suck it up, go to school. No, there's something going on there that they're nervous about, that they're stressed about. Maybe it's a bully. Our bodies are brilliant. We simply need to listen. And that's why I'm teaching people how to reconnect to their body. Yes, and then their sexuality. There's three parts kind of thing.
Yeah. And the thing about sexuality is when you go through your entire life putting aside how your body feels during eating, sleeping, any of it, and then all of a sudden you're in a bedroom naked and vulnerable with another person, and they're like, does that feel great? And you're like, I'm just going to tell you, yeah, because why would I hurt your feelings today?
Yeah, yeah. Because then that again threatens our safety, love, and belonging. And we've been told for how many years to get along, to be good, to fit in, to make it work, to suck it up.
Why on earth would you want something more when you have all of this? And it's like, well, all of this includes emotional abuse and no orgasms. And they're like, it's got a job. What? Okay, so this is a question outside of my realm. It's just a question out of my own ignorance. What exactly is tantric sex? Because it's something that pops up on my Instagram from time to time, and I'm like, look how sensual that one person is making themselves look, not even interacting with someone. And
Yep.
how do I not become the girl who's just like clutching her claw hands in the bedroom?
So there's Tantra, right? As a philosophy, as a technically a religion, if we go way back, right? Um, and then there's tantric sex. They are different. So I am studied in classical and neo tantra practices that both come from both sides of tantra. Neo being more modern and classical being the older school per se. Because there's definitely philosophies in the older school of Tantra that we bring into my coaching. So I use a lot of Tantra in my coaching, a lot of Tantric philosophies, a lot of Tantric practices, but I also have Tantric sex, which is another whole way to play, right? So to give you a little breakdown, I also call Tantra sometimes sacred sexuality or sacred pleasure. It's easier to get away on social media to call it sacred pleasure than sacred sexuality. And even Tantra, the word gets flagged these days on social media. So, Tantra, tantric sex, sacred sexuality, sacred pleasure. I use all those words interchangeably, just kind of FYI. Yeah. But Tantra is like a ancient spiritual practice. And in the Sanskrit term, like using it, I can't speak today. In Sanskrit, the term Tantra means to weave, and it's such a great way to explain it. It's weaving the physical with the spiritual. And that spiritual part is our sacred inner knowing. Oh my gosh, can't speak again. Our sacred inner knowing.
Yeah.
It's that part that locks in that we've got this. It's this, I know this is what I'm going to do in my business. I know this is who I'm going to date. I know this is who I'm going to speak to. I know I need to set this boundary. There's this inner locking in, inner sacred knowing that comes when we start to weave Tantra into our lives. So, sacred sexuality or Tantra, they can be practiced solo or as a solo or with a partner, right? You can do both. And you may be seeing tantric sex for partners or could be tantric sex as well for solo. And it's a beautiful way to come home in your body, to reconnect to your body, to reconnect to your pleasure, to see what your body really wants. This can be day to day, this can be in the bedroom, this can be for what you want to eat next. But really tapping into what your body wants, tapping into your pleasure, accessing deeper levels of feelings, sensations, emotions, right? It's going beyond who you are and coming home to who you are. It's like a both and, right? And there's nothing to fix. There's nothing to fix. This is a big philosophy. There's nothing to fix in you. There's nothing wrong with you. Let's just get that right. We already know that going back to, a toddler or a 4-year-old, they're running around and they are dancing in the rain naked. They don't care who's watching. They're not eating those peas and they are not going to bed. And that's the inner child that has been lost. Our inner knowing who we are and what we want. And when we're able to reclaim that, we're able to really come home in our body. We're bringing compassion and approval for everything we do. We're not judging. We're not shitting. We're not like, oh, look at how my body looks. Oh, I didn't have much pleasure there. Like, it's like, no, what can we celebrate? What can we see? What can we explore? Because when we do that, we actually up level. When we do that, our body starts to talk more to us. We start to feel safe. Our body feels safe. And we start to explore even more pleasure, even more, I want to say happiness, but that's not even the word, like true radiance, true pleasure in our everyday lives.
That's beautiful. That is a painting in the making. The interweaving of the spiritual and the body and bringing that into a sexual relationship. I love that it's a philosophy and I love that it's rooted in spirituality because I was just talking to my friend Annie, who's on the podcast from time to time. We're watching trashy TV as one does. And we were talking about Too Hot to Handle. And she goes, you can't watch American Too Hot to Handle. Nothing happens. They all just like shriek at one another and they're so embarrassed to be on the show that they signed up on. She goes, you have to watch like Australia, UK, Too Hot to Handle, where they're just like, I know what I'm here for and I'm going to do it. And I told her that America is still, it hit me during the musical Something Rotten when I had to watch pilgrims flee the Renaissance. And I went, and from those people, our nation was born. We are the people who fled the Renaissance because it was too spicy and it was too sexy and people were like thinking and pushing forward. And America is still so rooted in these puritanical beliefs about sex, and purity culture is on a rampage, and little girls go to debutante balls with their dads and pledge their virginity to their fathers. And what you're describing to me is the exact opposite of purity culture, but it's still one that you can say, and it's rooted in faith and it's rooted in spirituality. And I think that's beautiful because I'm constantly telling people virginity isn't real.
Yeah, it's deeply rooted in universal like law and consciousness and connectedness in it's all weaved together. All of it's connected. All of it's connected.
Because I think one of the things that purity culture has also done for our sex lives is it's made us embarrassed to believe that it is a spiritual connection. Like we're either hooking up and we're having one night stands and we're calling it all of these weird little tidbits to be like, it's just sex, ha. Or we're having sex to get married or have a baby or something along those lines.
A lot of people will refer to it once they've experienced sacred sexuality solo or sacred sexuality with a couple, tantra solo couple, tantra with a couple, they'll say if they do have kind of some of the other sex that you're talking about, that it's very hollow. So, right, there's still people we end up seeing and they're not connected. We thought they were, and it's just hollow. It's like empty sex. But when you bring in sacred sexuality and when you bring in sacred pleasure and tantra into sex, or even into sexual practices or intimacy practices, not all sex, right? But when you can bring that intimacy in, there's such a deepening, there's such a sacred knowing. Is absolutely beautiful.
Where do you think we are at currently as a culture and society with the term intimacy?
Most people think it's sex or kissing. Right? But it's not. It's like that, I want to say sacred inner knowing that you get with yourself, but then with a couple. And intimacy with yourself is totally valid. That sacred inner knowing, that listening to your body. I'll say frequently listening to your pussy. What does your pussy want? Like, have you touched in, tapped in, and listened today? Because pussy will never guide you astray. Like, ever. Ever. If you listen, people hear it in different ways. It might be a sensation, it might be a voice, it might be an intuitive hit. But if you check in with your body, with your pelvic bowl, which is your power center, women's power center, right in our pelvic bowl, we got root chakra and sacral. If we tap in and we listen to this place, it is our creative juices, it is our energy, it is our essence. It's so fun.
One time my pussy tried to block a man away from me, and it was like, what are we doing?
Always listen.
I was like, we're
Yeah.
COVID lonely. Can we just try? And she's like, no.
And you need to listen, because that's 3/4 of the stuff I'm doing with my clients, because they want to reconnect to their body. They want to feel more pleasure, but they have all of these other experiences where they overrode their body and they didn't listen. Starting from parents, right? Starting from boyfriends, people that penetrated too early or you didn't want to have sex with, but you kind of wanted to have sex, right? And we're losing consent from our body if we do that. Many women won't even say anything if something hurts, or if they have to go pee, or if there's a hair in the way, right? Like they just like starfish and numb out and dissociate essentially. They're like, I feel a little bit of pleasure. And then the other thing comes in, drunk sex. Typically, a lot of women will lead into alcohol to have sex because it allows them to get out of their head, right? But you actually can get to a point when you're releasing and healing and doing this work around your body, your pleasure, your sexuality, consent, boundaries. When you can get in there and heal these parts, you can actually start to reawaken your body and experience more pleasure by doing so.
What you're talking about how women disassociate and like really go deep inside of themselves during sex. I'm a big TikTok addict, and I can't go through one episode without being like, I saw on TikTok. But there's this term in the lesbian community called a pillow princess. And I guess someone was just sick of pillow princesses getting a bad name because they are the people that you heap pleasure on. And that is how you gain your pleasure as well. And they were talking straight to the camera and they're like, listen, stop blaming pillow princesses because for years they have been told to just be quiet and accept whatever sex is going to happen to them.
Yeah, that's a message that we receive.
It is. And it's like, so every time a pillow princess lays down and something good happens to her and she learns a way to communicate that that felt good or she felt safe enough for you to go down on her, because that's still a thing that I hear women go, it just makes me feel icky when they actually want to give me pleasure. And I'm like, okay.
That's shame. That is full out shame. Yeah. Holding shame in our body, holding shame around our bodies, around our sexuality. And there's no place for shame. Like, shame is just the lowest vibration, and it will tear us down if we keep following the shame. We really do need to eradicate that shame.
I was 30 years old the first time that I had period sex, and I remember being grateful that nothing had to stop because I was like an unclean, indisposed woman.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not true. And these are just messages that have been sent down for thousands of years. And a lot of it did start with like the beginning of the patriarchal system, which was like bringing in the church, right? When religion started, there was so much power and control, and you can't even get into that. We'd be here for hours if we went there. But it's time to unwind that shit and really reclaim who we are. I actually have a signature sexy back approach, which are my 3 pillars, which is reclaim, reconnect, and remember. Do you want to hear about all of them? You want me to go into them quickly? So reclaiming is about reclaiming the places that you've lost yourself, that have been shut down, put away, dismissed, right? Maybe by you, maybe by somebody else. It doesn't matter. But your truth, your boundaries, your being, your feeling, you being seen, you're feeling sexy, turning on, all of these places where we've lost our power. And then reconnecting is reconnecting to your body, to your sexuality, to your pleasure, to your pelvic bowl, to the oracle between your thighs, aka pussy, right? She's there. And she's there to lead you. She literally is a GPS, like GPS, okay? But by reconnecting, again, we cultivate more trust and safety in ourselves. We're reclaiming these boundaries and these places we've given our power away. And then what happens is this remembrance, this deep remembrance in your body of who you are, like who you truly are, how it's safe to show up in that power of who you are and really unleash that unapologetic power.
I love that.
That's what happened.
Because during COVID, I actually got my ass together when it came to meditation and yoga. And I used to practice yoga in only shorts and my sports bra because if I was going to do something hard, I wanted to actually see my body do it and be like, yes. Because yoga is another thing where we have been convinced that only very lithe, attractive people get to do it. And not true. We have reclaimed yoga for all bodies. So I wanted to see and be like, yes, my body is yoga appropriate. My body can do these things. My body will do these things. And then I entered a relationship with a man who had a very poor relationship with his body. And that would manifest in him asking me questions about whether or not I had ever thought to make my body better. And I'd be like, no. I practice yoga basically naked, so I can be like, hell yeah, that's my body, and look at what it does. And he was flabbergasted. So I've started a lot of the emotional and mental work, and now all of a sudden I'm not currently dating, and every once in a while I get on a dating app. I don't know, to trick myself into believing that that's what's going to happen. And because I'm still at this point where it's like, you are 34 years old and you can count on one hand, and probably half a hand, how many times you've enjoyed sex. Or someone asked you how much you were enjoying sex, or things like that.
And I would say there, you don't need a partner, by the way. Right? It's time to really like start exploring and giving yourself the pleasure that you desire and really learning what your body wants. And when you do that, and then you reconnect and reclaim and remember, and you get into the just who you are, and you just don't give a shit anymore, which sounds like you're almost the way there. When you really get into that point, you also start to manifest and attract the people that are aligned with you, which is really, really cool.
Yes, because isn't that the tricky thing about growing, whether it be sexually or mentally or emotionally? You start looking around the people that are in the room with you, and you're like, why the fuck am I hanging out with you?
Yeah, we do that for way too long, right? And then it's like, wait, I have choice, I have sovereignty here, and it's time to replace those pieces. Yes.
I have a really great new friend who every time I say, well, I have to because she will remind me, you know what's my favorite part of being a grown up? Is that you technically don't have to do anything, see anyone, talk to anyone. You get to do whatever the fuck you actually want to do.
One of the first things I do with my clients is exactly get rid of the shoulds. There are no shoulds. Shoulds is like shitting on yourself. You're shitting on yourself. If you're saying should, you catch it and go, no, do I want to or do I not want to? Whatever that may be. If it's, I should go cook dinner. Do you want to cook dinner? No, then don't. Like, really, do you have to? Like, look at it. Is there something else you could do?
I decided at 11 a.m. I wasn't cooking dinner tonight.
Well done. Well
Thank
done.
you. And I think that is also why we are in such a situation now where it feels like everyone's kind of backed into a corner and they're looking at people waiting for them to piss them off almost. Because I think when it came to intimacy, we all thought that we were doing it because we were making these friendships and these relationships that were taking the place of our parents and our siblings, and we were making them hot and heavy and fast. And then all of a sudden we woke up one day and went, no, why the fuck am I hanging out with these people? And then you're like, well, the alternative is if I don't hang out with them, I have to hang out with myself. And what do I know about that person?
And it's very natural to attract people. We do it all the time. Most people are in partnerships with people who resemble their parents. And we swear we're never going to do it, right? We swear we're never going to do it. But our nervous system feels comfortable and safe because we're used to it, whether they're loud, whether they're lazy, whether they, criticize you all the time. You're used to it. So we go back to naturally these places where it makes us feel like we know what to expect. And once we see it, we're like, oh, and we stop that shit. But it is what feels comfortable to our bodies when we don't do the work.
Our body has already stored how to cope with that thing. So it's like, oh, we don't have to start from the ground zero. I know how to cope when someone tells you that you look a little fat today. You've been hearing that for years.
And there's other relationships you can probably identify where they were damn good for you, but you pushed them away because they might have been a little too good.
Yeah.
And the too good felt too uncomfortable. So we pushed those away.
It's amazing how we try to recreate. I just feel bad for us all because it's like we're trying to get back. Capitalism and the patriarchy made a really great job of dividing all of us and was like, you don't need villages. You don't need a cohort to raise kids. Moms can work and raise kids without any help. Don't you dare hire a babysitter. All of it. All of these messages that we've been getting about how like you don't need connection. Connection is a bonus, but also make people like you because what if you die without people liking you? And and then we all became these like feral toddlers just trying to be like, I would like a village. I'll be the baker in said village. What's your craft?
Yeah, we could totally go back to living in those types of villages per se. And, yes, modern society has been very helpful in many ways as well, or we wouldn't be able to be having this podcast recording together. But there's things that we need to heal. There's things that we need to look at, really, truly look at. And the reason I use sacred sexuality and sexuality, period, is because it is like this fast portal into reconnecting to who you are, your truth, who you stand for, what you want to stand for. It's like this fast track right into who you are. And if we can all do that, we can all create what we want. We can stop this bullshit. Now, of course, we're not going to change it overnight, but we get to create our own life, our own circle.
I did see that on your website you offer also 1-on-2 counseling for couples or coaching for couples. And I was wondering if during those initial sessions or even just in your career when you're out to dinner with a new group of people and you tell people about your job, are you still finding people in your circles giving you pushback? Like, well, why is that a thing?
No, most people won't push back. They either won't talk to me about it, even though they know what I do, or they hear it and they go, "Oh yeah, okay. How's those? I was gonna say Jays because I'm Canadian, but how's those Leafs playing?" Right? They might like change the subject, right? Which would be the Toronto baseball team and Toronto hockey team, in case you don't know. Right? So they might change the subject, or they lean in and go, "Oh my gosh, I need to talk to you like more." Yeah, it's one of the two, but I don't get too much pushback. It's interesting. If anything, even my husband's friends will come over and they're like, "So, can we have a chat about?" I'm like, "Okay." I have like teenagers. I say teenagers are still adults. There's like 22, 19, and a 17-year-old. And the 17-year-old is the only girl, and she's more mature than both the boys. But, even they will come and go, okay, can we talk about like squirting or whatever? I'm like, okay. Like we have such open conversations. My daughter warns her boyfriends before they meet me. Just so you know, she will talk about sex whenever she wants. And they're like, okay. And that's okay. That's just is, there's nothing wrong with it.
No. Do you think that at any point we will get to the point where sex education in our schools is not only prevalent and well written and well done, but is also making sure that there is a chapter on this is what you're going to do if you're not feeling pleasure, or this is what happens when you do feel pleasure, or anything like that?
I would love there to be. Now, I also think there are some people who can do that in our region. No more teachers teach sex education. It's actually a woman who owns a business downtown, and she does it all. She does pussy pillows. My daughter came home from going, Mom, she had a pussy pillow, because I have a pussy pillow here too. And I was like, she what? She goes, she had a penis pillow too. So they actually were playing with proper terms. But I think and I actually met this woman at like an expo, like at a fair. We were right booth by booth beside each other like a year later. It was really cool. And she agrees, and there's this pleasure piece, and there's all of these other pieces that she does teach privately. But the schools won't let it in yet, right? The schools are like, okay, you can teach, but you can't go talk about this. You can teach the basics, but you can't do this, because the parents are going to scream if you do, right? You really can't. It's really tricky. So I think eventually it'll get there, but more adults need to wake the fuck up first.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I don't think we understand the lasting harm that goes into everyone's sexuality. My sex ed revolved around STIs, with a lovely like PowerPoint presentation that my health teacher like insisted on eating foods that looked like the slide during to torture us. He was like, no one better ever be thinking about getting lucky at prom, because you'll have to remember that burnt bagel.
Oh, oh, that's awful. It's either shame. I can't believe you're taught by a man. That shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Right? So the shame of you're going to get an STI, or you're going to get pregnant, or you're going to die. That was it. You're going to get pregnant, you're going to die, or you're going to die.
They wouldn't let anyone talk about birth control in our school. And the only reason I was ever talked about birth control in school is because I took the family and child awareness class or something. The one where at some point I was running a daycare in my school. And she was like, by the way, condom, pills, those are your choices.
Oh my gosh, there's so many others. Ugh.
So many others. And I grew up in Indiana, by the way, and I haven't escaped the Midwest yet, but one day it will happen.
I can't believe that's all you got. You already said you're 34?
34.
So 20 years ago, not that long ago,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't get birth control talk in your sex ed.
Nope.
Catholic school?
No. Public high school.
Really?
But they did hire a man to come and talk to the juniors and seniors before prom. We had a giant assembly in our auditorium. And he basically recounted for us the plot of how Stella got her groove back. I have a friend. She got divorced. She took her and her girlfriend on a yaya trip to go reclaim herself after her divorce because she was big sad. She met some young, plucky, attractive, I guess, Tay Diggs. and in wherever she was at on this trip, and she was hooking up with him. And then I was like, and that's where how Stella got her groove back ends. I've seen this movie. My mom doesn't monitor what I want. Angela Bassett gets like a couple of good, or monitor what I watch. Angela Bassett gets like 2 or 3 great orgasms in, and she gets to go home and like live a life. And instead of the movie wrapping up to be like, and my friend had a great time, and this is how you have a great time at prom, it was, my friend came back. She immediately got diagnosed with HIV, and now she is a person who is dying because we hadn't changed it over to living with AIDS, dying of AIDS.
Wow. Yeah. Even my daughter's friends, even my son's friends will come over and go, Can you show us this? Can you talk? Like, what about, right? And I'm happy to answer those questions. I might have a few angry moms banging down my door, but I really don't give a damn because these young women, right, are teenagers. They don't have the information. Now, they were taught how to put on condoms and stuff like that, except some of it, actually, my daughter, my youngest, was not because of COVID. So I showed a group of girls how to do that, right? Because COVID just knocked out all their classes. They didn't get sex ed in grade 8. So some of those things, but yeah, they have questions, and there doesn't need to be shame around their body. There doesn't need to be shame around their sexuality. There doesn't need to be shame around their pleasure. And
when you're not allowed to ask questions during sex ed, that also rewrites in your brain because it fucking wrote it in my brain. Well, also don't ask your partners anything about sex because no one knows. We're just making babies. It's just one of those things where my best friend and I talk a lot about where I'll get hung up with in a relationship, and I'll be like, I don't understand because parts of my body still give me signals that I want him, and then other parts of my body are so fucking over it or like anxious about it or like pissed off that we want him. And my friend was like, well, we weren't taught anything about how we were supposed to enjoy sex or other people or anything. And she goes, but we sure were taught on how to make our bodies a commodity to get what we want or to get like safety, to take an edge off of the loneliness and whatnot. And we talk about it now. We don't talk about it enough. And we don't talk about it to 15-year-olds about how easy it is to, instead of focusing on the pleasure and the spirituality and the connection in sex, it's like, I'll give them a blowjob for those Taylor Swift tickets if only I can go see Taylor Swift.
yeah, it really is toxic messaging, and we get to change it. We get to change it. There's so many moms out there that won't even talk to their kids about sex because they can't even talk about sex with their partner, right? So we need to start changing it by working with ourselves, working with our partners, if they want to, if we want to, with them, and then really teach the next generation a totally different way that is more healing, more honoring.
I'm down. I'm down for like the whole vibe of the 70s when abortion was like not illegal and we were all in the free love movement and people were like trying things out. There was a lot of weed. Like I would like a resurgence. If the bell bottoms are going to come back, can the sexuality ideals come back?
The sexuality ideals need to come back no matter the bell bottoms.
Yeah. Oh.
Right? This is our body. This is how we came into this world. We can't walk around a walking, talking head. We need to include our whole body.
Because we only get the one. Unless they really did freeze Walt Disney and they're going to put his head on someone else when they feel like he should come back. This has been, I know that this is going to touch so many of the listeners because, again, I was 32, maybe sitting with a bunch of women at a brunch who were in their mid 20s to upper 20s. And I was just talking very honestly about a fantasy I had been having about a threesome with some members of the Critical Role cast. And I was also talking about why I was kind of distancing myself from the idea of sex being only with men because it wasn't where I was getting my pleasure points from. And they just looked at me and they went, do people do this? Do people just sit around and talk about sex and what they like and what they hope and what they would like to have happen? I go, well, I hope so.
I hope so, yeah.
If we're going to send nudes and sex on Snapchat, we might as well also be communicating openly and honestly about what feels good with other people. Because maybe someone's been like, I've never tried that, but that sounds great.
It's the shame again. It keeps us locked, keeps us quiet, keeps us separate.
Yes, and the separation is the biggest tool that they have.
Yeah, it's time to reconnect to ourselves, to each other, and really just have a ton of fun.
So I can't thank you enough for being open to connection with me, for sharing with my guests your story. We have two traditions to close out to all the men I've tolerated before, where I've been calling it the stitched lesson on a pillow because it's the easiest way for me to picture it. But if you had a lesson that you would write in a grimoire and be passed down for the generations, or an ornamental pillow that would also be in a museum or passed down through the generations, what would that lesson be? And what is something that you are manifesting in the future and putting out into the collective community about our conversation and what needs to change about sexuality?
Okay, you might have to ask me the second one again, because I can definitely respond to the first right now. The biggest lesson would be to listen to your body. Now, you have to reconnect to do so, but to listen to your body, to trust yourself, because your body knows exactly what is meant for you, exactly what's right for you, exactly what's wrong for you. And if we can just learn to come home in our body and trust, 99% of the things would go so much better. That's my lesson.
I think I would tack on to that lesson and remind people that self-love and self-expression of that love for yourself isn't vanity or selfishness or drama or whatever it was that your jealous cousin told you when you were 12 years old to get you to shut up. Stop leaning into the, well, I couldn't do that because that means that I'm only thinking about myself, and start thinking along the lines of, well, what would that mean if I started thinking about myself in the majority of my day?
Yeah, so good. Just, yeah, getting intimate with yourself, trusting yourself. Your body will always lead you in the right direction. So that's why that trust is just the number one.
And then the manifestation. What are you hoping to put back into our futures and our collective energy?
Literally, that we turn on, that like the world turns on, that we wake up, that we come home in our bodies, that we're honest, that we're open, that we're present, that we're alive and turned on in our own life essence.
And I'm going to go ahead and hope that pleasure becomes such a natural, open, and easy part of our everyday lives that they put it on curriculums and that they tell people, and that we are finally giving people openly, naturally, and lovingly the tools that they will need to have these very heavy conversations with their loved ones, with themselves, about what sex means to them currently and what they even want sex to mean to them in the future. Make sure that my listeners know all of the ways that they can connect with you.
You got it. So you already said, or I already said, I was in Canada. So my website is getyoursexyback.ca for Canada. You'll remember that. Instagram, Get Your Sexy Back Coach with underscores in between all the words. You're going to drop the links, I'm sure, in the show notes too. On Facebook, you can friend me personally, Kim Coffin. I do have a private Facebook group for women, Get Your Sexy Back as well. If you're female identifying woman, that is available to you. 2 seconds away. And of course, as always, you can follow the podcast, Get Your Sexy Back with Kim Coffin podcast. That is great. And I also have a free gift for your listeners today, too. So I don't know if I've sent that to you, but if so, I will. There's 7 free tips to turn on today. There's a sacred pleasure practice and a free month to my sacred pleasure membership in here. So
amazing. I love that. Gifts is one of my love languages.
Yay.
Tolerators, I put the handy dandy little ad at the beginning or the end of this podcast about all of the ways that you can connect with us. But the most important one is Instagram, because Instagram is where we post about all of the things. So make sure that you're following us on Men I've Tolerated Pod. Make sure you're also following us at To All the Men I've Tolerated Before on YouTube, mostly because that's where the trolls come to attack what we're doing. And they're going to get to continue to do that unless other people besides me are telling them the patriarchy is bad for you too.
Yeah, the patriarchy is not against men. It hurts men as well.
Yeah. It's not there. It's not a party for you. It's bad for you. But one day they'll listen. Maybe they already have. And remember, tolerators, you don't have to smile through anything you're tolerating, including conversations about sex and love that make you feel like you should be embarrassed, shamed, or downright gross about how your body is looking or feeling and what it is desiring. Smiles are for joy.